You are listening to From the Sea, a podcast series produced by South China Sea Studies. This program provides valuable insights from experts around the world on geopolitical and security developments, with regards to the South China Sea as an area in a connected maritime landscape. In today's episode, Dr. Chiew Ping from the East Asian International Relations Caucus will discuss nuclear proliferation risks, response strategies, and regional stability in the South China Sea, within the context of great power rivalry.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of From the Sea podcast series from South China Sea Studies. Today is my pleasure to have Dr. Chiew Ping, the co-founder of the East Asian International Relations Caucus, joining me for another episode. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've heard that recently you have contributed to a survey designed by Jeffrey or Daniel, which is another colleague of us, on proliferation trend or non-proliferation trend among big powers, right? And how Southeast Asian country perceive those trends. Yes?
That's right.
And I heard that the survey result have been published. So maybe the first questions is, would you kindly share with us some of the key takeaway or your impressions on the survey?
Thank you so much. So Pacific Forum got the funding to conduct this survey, and it is really interesting. For the very first time, we are going to run an opinion survey among the Southeast Asians about how do we perceive the nuclear competition between the United States and China. So the nuclear dimension in Southeast Asia has several different domains. So one is in the nuclear proliferation, as you mentioned, and the second is actually in our very maritime domain. So the nexus between nuclear and maritime is seldom explored, and Southeast Asia actually has Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapons Free Zone Treaty, and it is the only nuclear weapon free zone treaty in the world that covers the maritime domain. And this is why it is the only nuclear weapons free zone treaty in the world that has not been signed on or ratified by any of the nuclear weapon states. So the controversial issues, including none of the nuclear weapon states, the P5, are willing to provide negative security assurance to the ASEAN member states. Negative security assurance means that this nuclear weapon state would agree not to attack or threaten non-nuclear weapon states with their nuclear arsenal. So if this type of assurance cannot be provided to us, so how are we going to navigate when US-China nuclear competition intensifies? So this is why we are very concerned about, and there is also the issue of it may prompt the Southeast Asian countries to also start to invest in nuclear energy projects, and that may be the beginning of nuclear proliferation.
I think the survey went through opinions of maybe a couple of hundreds.
Yes, that's right.
Policymakers and thinkers, experts in all 10 Southeast Asia.
Exactly.
That's quite extensive. How did the result go?
Right. So even though most of the respondents doesn't have a high level of awareness about nuclear issues, but the nuclear issues does create a lot of concerns for the region. So it is of the opinion that among those who have taken the survey that we have to do something about it. So there is a need to re-examine the Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapons Free Zone Treaty. Part of the reason why Indonesia, as an ASEAN chair last year, actually trying to get the P5 to sign on to it. And so far, only China signaled the intention to do so. However, they have not done so. And part of the reason is that now Southeast Asian countries are holding back because China may use this opportunity to actually claim the 9-10 line because of the legitimacy, because of the definition provided by the Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapons Treaty, in short, Bangkok Treaty, actually detailing the continental shelf, exclusive economic zone. So, but it is actually up to the signatories' interpretation. So there is also a concern about China potentially deploying a floating nuclear power plant in South China Sea, so they can have a near 24/7 presence in South China Sea, among the occupied features and the militarized features.
There's a trend of increasing concern, but also there's an urgency within ASEAN in terms of, we have to do something about it
that's
now.
right. So if the US-China nuclear competition was kept among between them and not spread to Southeast Asia, maybe we care less about it. But there is now potentially increasingly substance in spreading to Southeast Asia, and that's why it's a big concern.
Right, and then you mentioned that the survey took into account the nexus between nuclear proliferations and maritime security, and then you also mentioned the potential for FNPP, a floating nuclear power plant, to be deployed in the South China Sea. How do you assess the possibility of that? Because I think a few months ago, right, we all saw the news about China announcement of the halt or the stop of their FNPP plan, which is also a little bit, I would say a little bit strange, considering how much efforts have been put into it since 2016, right?
Yes, that's right.
So yeah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think because every time China announced the potential deployment, so Southeast Asian countries thus resisted. So the main concerns cited including nuclear accidents, because this region is not free from typhoon, for example, and the Fukushima incident in Japan does raise the stake a lot higher for countries, neighboring countries, to because Germany even stopped relying on nuclear energy because of the Fukushima incident. So, and for ASEAN member states, we lack capacity in managing that kind of a scenario. So the reason why China could have hold back is because right now in the world, only Russia have such operating capacity, only one facility. And as for the United States, they planned for a very long time, but the project never took off because of the high risk concern. So the engineering safety risks are definitely on top of the agenda when it comes to real deployment. But China may need to deploy it for its other poorer coastal region to supply the energy need much more than they need to supply energy to South China Sea.
So you're saying it's more of a, from your reading, the FNPP plan would be more of a sort of economic aid rather than a security aid, rather than a tool to embold or exert maritime claims, or to help exert maritime claims.
Yeah, so the fact that it could help China to maintain a longer presence in South China Sea does help in the way to assert its claim along the maritime domain. However, as we are still managing the South China Sea dispute and by the way of COC negotiation, so there is no need to further complicate the issues, and also because of the US and their allies' support for Taiwan Strait situation, in which it was really close to South China Sea as well, and because the test in which the FNPP of China was actually in Bohai, so between Korean Peninsula and northeastern China. So if the FNPP is to be deployed in South China Sea, it would surely pass by Taiwan. So to not unnecessarily provoke reactions from the perceived rivals, so there are many reasons for China not to hastily deploy at the moment.
Okay, I see. I have also heard another sort of, I wouldn't say argument, but just like a predictions about the potential usage of FNPP for security usage. They said, I mean, of course, some people have said, okay, it could be used to fuel, to power artificial island, so on and so forth, right? And then some other say, this one is interesting. I've heard people that say, oh, FNPP could be used as some sort of triggering point, like a part of a tripwire system that can, in case of conflict, it could be dragged into it and then justify retaliations. But that would you say that these kind of comments are a little bit too far-fetched?
Right. It doesn't help with the fact that the US has been holding many war games and crisis simulation exercises involving nuclear exchange scenario with China, whether it is over the South China Sea and especially over Taiwan Strait. So there is complication about. So when I interview experts and professors studying about these issues, they said actually war games made both the US and China realize even more so they want to avoid war at all costs. So the stake is too high and no one wants a nuclear catastrophe in this region. So in a way there are pros and cons to it. So it is important for Southeast Asia, for example, for us to be aware of the issues and to talk about it also.
Have you had a chance to look into maybe international law framework in terms of regulating FMPP?
Oh yes.
So as far as I'm concerned, at the moment, there has not really been any concrete or substantial, because FMPP can, there's still debate about what type of characterizations under the legal framework.
Right. So actually, there are two major agencies. So one is the International Atomic and Energy Agency, so IAEA, and the second is the International Maritime Organization. So you see, nuclear and maritime. So they each cover different areas. So for IAEA, of course, is the safety regulations of nuclear plant itself, and for the IMO, it is really about the shipping, transportation of nuclear material, potential leakage of nuclear radiation. So actually there is a lot of conference being held by these two agencies in collaboration to jointly regulate. And very recently, between South Korea and UK, they are establishing an organization called Nuclear Energy Maritime Organization, so abbreviation NEMO. So they already garnered about more than 24 companies and agencies to work together. So, but their interest is more commercial related. They actually wanted to introduce nuclear energy in maritime shipping. So that's actually adding another dimension that we have yet to grasp the implications. So far, no cargo ship has been proven to be able to conduct shipping with the nuclear energy yet, but it involves a much smaller nuclear small modular reactor. So I think it's just 1/10 of the normal on-the-ground nuclear power plant. So it is said to be able to lead to a more sustainable ocean due to cleaner maritime transportation. UK and ROK are really invested in this. South Korean government agency is involved in this. So I think there are now more and more uncertainties in the especially in the nuclear maritime nexus in this area. So for us, we definitely need to pay attention. And Southeast Asia, actually, we have our own nuclear expertise. So our government did explore the potential of launching our own nuclear energy initiatives. So many of our people were trained in nuclear science, nuclear engineering. They even become consultant at IAEA, for example. So the regional experts are now trying to play with the idea that maybe we can set up, but this issue was so sensitive. It was resisted by among the ASEAN member states. So when one government announced the initiative to do so, the other will say, hold on, don't do that. And likewise, for our major dialogue partners like the US, when they learn of our plans, they also try to pressure us not to go ahead with it. Even though Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapons Free Zone Treaty actually give us the right to develop the nuclear energy. And that's one of the main reasons why the US doesn't want to sign on the treaty back in the 90s.
This is the end of this episode. Stay tuned for our upcoming discussion, which will be released on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, as well as on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you for listening.